So I live in an apartment complex right next to a 7-Eleven. Literally a 2-minute walk from my door. So, since all this quarantine lockdown mess, I've been staying up later than usual till maybe 2 or 3 in the morning most nights. So last night, a little bit after 12, I had a taste for some chips and decided that I would go across the street to 7-Eleven, which I go to regularly. So I make my way over, and on my way in, I had to pass this man who was browsing on the Redbox kiosk. I don't think much of it. I go inside, get some snacks, pay, and then head out of the door. As I'm coming out, the Redbox man is literally staring dead at me with these scarily bright, light blue eyes. But not wanting to freak myself out even more, I say to myself, maybe he's zoned out or in deep thought. I wander into La La Land myself, sometimes so by thinking that. I was trying to make myself more comfortable having to walk past this strange man. So I'm headed back into my apartment complex, which on this side of the street has a creaky gate door. I realized that as I was walking, I never heard it slam behind me like I always had before. I look back and the man is right behind me. Not close up on me, but still, definitely following. Once again, trying to ease my mind, I'm thinking that he must be going home. But I also noticed that he didn't have any disc in his hand. For as much as he was at the kiosk the whole time I was in the store, taking my sweet, indecisive time. So not wanting to come off as scared, I keep my same pace. But I probably should have sprinted because, man, forget being nice. Anyways, I'm literally just a few steps away from my door, which is upstairs, and the man randomly calls out to me, "Hey, do you have a lighter?" Out of instinct, I turned my head to the fact I knew someone was speaking to me and responded, "No, I don't, sorry." I didn't want to go up my stairs because I didn't want to let this man know exactly which apartment that I lived in. So I was planning on walking around until I lost him. But he asked me another question. "Could I use your bathroom?" I tell him, "No, sorry, my roommates probably wouldn't be comfortable with me letting someone in this late. I don't have roommates, but I dang sure didn't want this man getting any ideas thinking that I was by myself." I keep walking, but this man was still following me. I simply ask, "Do you live around here?" And he tells me, "I have a buddy that does and he was supposed to meet me across the way there, but maybe he fell asleep or something." I've never been here before, but I do know his door is at number 201. Could you help me find it? 201 is my door, plus if you had a friend that lives over here, why are you asking to use my bathroom? I knew this man was lying and up to something. I quickly came up with 201. That should be right past the pool right next to the laundry area. My friends are waiting for me, so I should get going. My gut told me to head to my car though, because what if he watched where I was going and decided to give me a surprise later on? No, I watch too many movies and read too many scary stories uploaded on here. So I started heading towards the parking lot. Not running, but definitely walking quicker than before, when I realized the man is chasing me at this point. I hurry up and pull my keys out of my pocket and get in my car and immediately lock the doors. The man starts pounding on my driver's side window telling me to open the door. I can't help but focus on those creepy blue eyes, but I also notice that he was reaching for his pocket. I start up my car before I can see what he was going to pull out. I heard a pop, but I didn't give a crap at that moment, as long as I could get the heck out of his presence. I drove maybe 5 minutes down the street to this Arco gas station and called the police. Waiting on the police to arrive, I noticed what the popping sound was. This wacko had popped my back tire with probably a switchblade. Of course, when the police arrived and went to check the area, the random guy was gone. They did question the 7-Eleven clerk, and he let them know that the man had been up there a few times since last week, and never has been a problem but is obviously homeless. I'm still shook up about what went on last night, and I'm going to chill on the late night trips to 7-Eleven for a little bit. To the messed up Redbox man, let's not meet again. But if we do, I have a taser for you on its way from Amazon. Try me. It was probably only after my close call that my mind really started to run away with what could have happened were it not for my dog. I'm a 26-year-old female. I live with my fiance and my 2 cats and my dog, Rowan. Our house is literally less than a minute away from a huge farmer's field that is frequented by many dog walkers at all times of the day. Me and my significant other often take turns walking Rowan around the field throughout the day. It was only around 7:30 p.m. and it was still really bright and sunny. Rowan was letting me know that it was time to go for a walk, so while my partner was tinkering in the garage, I grabbed his leash and headed to the field. Let me quickly tell you about Rowan. He's a 2-year-old Rottweiler who is very loving and playful, if a little daft, but he wouldn't hurt a fly. There's not a bad bone in his body. He is also extremely well trained, and we made sure to put the effort in as he's a big dog breed with a bad rep, so we wanted to make a point of not feeding stereotypes. I'm very much of the opinion of there's no bad dogs, just bad owners. Unfortunately, we've had some run-ins with some not so good dog owners, so Rowan gets a little nervous when he meets new dogs and people, but we're working on it. Anyway, back to the story. We're walking around the farmer's field. Rowan is off sniffing and peeing on every blade of grass in sight. I always keep an eye out for other walkers anyway due to Rowan being a little nervous, and I clocked a guy on his own walking down the path towards me fairly far away. At first I thought nothing of it, as plenty of people walk this route without dogs. We were just kind of getting into lockdown in the UK though. As the guy got closer, I noticed he was in a full tracksuit with the hood up, which was odd because it was like 23 degrees, so shorts and t-shirt weather. He then took a small path off the field leading through some bushes. It was a public-made shortcut rather than an official public footpath, but it was well enough used, so I kept walking, thinking nothing of it. At about 15 meters away from the path he took, Rowan shot back to my side immediately, dropping the mouthful of dirt he had been pretending not to eat. He's not the brightest. I petted him and noticed that he was standing super alert, staring at the path entrance. When I looked up, I caught a glimpse of the man peeking around the edge of the bushes that had concealed the entrance. I stopped dead on my tracks and Rowan's fur was stood on end as he positioned himself in front of me. It took me a second to realize that this man had been watching and waiting in the bushes for me to approach. My current route would have meant that I would be walking right by the path's opening. My stomach dropped as I realized we were the only ones around on that field. I had this weird moment where I was almost trying to convince myself that I was overreacting, but then the guy whistled. Not a wolf whistle, but as if to try and get my dog to come to him. Rowan was having none of that though, and I definitely took it as my cue to trust my stranger danger instincts. I immediately turned and sped walked back the way that we came, while simultaneously pulling my phone out and dialing my partner's number. I ended up having to clip on Rowan's lead to get him to walk with me, and he was not taking his eyes away from the path. He was even growling a little, which was so out of character and put me on edge even more. I glanced back and the man had edged slightly out of the bushes, watching me walk away. My partner answered the phone after a few rings. I was only halfway through stammering out the story and he was already sprinting up to the field to meet me, telling me to stay on the phone but keep an eye on the man. The man in the tracksuit now fully came out of the bushes and just stood staring at me, walking away. I dared a quick look away from him towards the entrance to the field, to see my fiancé jogging towards me. He was relieved that I was okay, but was also immediately pointing and shouting, "Is that him?" Clearly furious at what this man might have had in mind, had Rowan not picked up on him hiding in the bushes. I eventually convinced my fiancé not to confront him, as he was still stood staring, almost taunting us. You never know what people might be capable of or have concealed. We came off the field and took Rowan on a different walk, which he was more than happy about. I've never been so proud of Rowan for stepping up and protecting me. Safe to say, he got plenty of treats and fussing when we got home. So, creepy man in the bushes, let's not meet. I've had a stalker for over 2 years. I'm a 27-year-old female, and have worked with people with disabilities since I was 19. I was born with a rare genetic condition, and have been using my experience as a radical disability activist and advocate to help other people with disabilities in my community. During my time working in the disability community, I have been sexually harassed and assaulted several times by both men and women. When I first started working with the organization, I was working with my best friend's older brother, her older sister, and several of her aunts, uncles, and cousins. So in the beginning, I always felt safe. Like people would do anything to keep the creeps away from me. They would have. However, after several years, all my close friends slowly started leaving. Flash forward to a couple of years ago, when most of my closest friends were all gone, leaving me one of the most experienced and senior staff members, including all of the management and the board of directors. I've had a lot of bad experiences in these past 2 years, with the stuff stated above, but the worst part has been the lack of support from management. So, within the last few years, a client that we'll call Leonard, a male in his 50s, started to chat with me at community events. We often have parties or events that we invite the entire community to. From the very first moment that I met Leonard, I experienced chills creeping up and down my spine. Something about the way that he looked at me has always made me super uncomfortable, to the point that I'll do literally anything to get away from him, including helping folks in the bathroom. He's a really short white guy with shocking white hair and these clear blue eyes that are just empty. He's always really smiley and soft-spoken. He started off innocent enough. He would corner me at parties and talk until I found a reason to slip away. But at some point, he managed to get my personal cell phone number from a coworker, I still don't know who, and started calling me late at night and leaving long, rambling messages. I never answered the phone, and after a while, he stopped. He would still periodically call me though, despite me asking him politely in person to stop. He started cornering me in the office too, when no one was around, so I had a difficult time getting away from him. Every time that he cornered me, he would grab my arm or shoulder so I couldn't leave. More recently, like during the lockdown, he started calling the office and leaving messages on my work phone after hours. He wasn't even someone that I personally worked with. I asked my coworker who did work with him to please ask him to stop, and which she did. She spoke to him several times, but he would only ever stop for a week or two. And he always made a point to come and apologize directly to me, which almost always made me more uncomfortable. It started to get really bad about 3 weeks before I started working from home. He would forget his appointments, which were purposefully set on the one day in the week when I wasn't working in the office. He would come in the next day when he knew that I was working, and then he figured out when I got off, and would come in to meet with my coworker right before I got off work and to wait around until my shift ended. He started giving me little gifts, which I always refused. Every time he would get really offended, so then he started writing me poetry. Instead of just handing it to me, he would grab me and read over my shoulder and point out what every single line meant. I always tried to get other coworkers to help me, but no one saw anything as weird or bad or unsafe, despite the warning bells going off in my head. And then one day he cornered me and said he wanted to take me to the train station, because I usually walked. I asked him if he meant he wanted to walk me the 2 blocks. He shook his head and said, "No, I want to take you in my car so I can keep a better eye on you." It gave me instant chills. I told him no, but he kept insisting that it would happen before he finally left. I'm a tiny petite person, so the idea that he was following me long enough to know exactly which train station that I went to, and the line that I got on. There are several different lines going in several different directions, and even the direction that I was going really freaked me out. Enough to double up on the defensive measures I normally keep on me, including pepper spray and a taser. I told everyone. I told supervisors, HR, the associate director, everyone that I could think of. I had meetings with my direct supervisors where I explained everything that happened and why he was giving me the creeps. But they all just brushed me off, and one manager in particular said I was being too dramatic. He was just a sweet older man, doing nothing to harm anyone. Until the next time he came around. I told a couple of my coworkers, J and P, a 28-year-old male and a 26-year-old male, and they both agreed that one of them would always walk me out from now on. On cue, Leonard waited around until after I got off, but J and P, who said they had looked out for me, were both super busy, so the associate director said he would walk me out, still not believing that it was a big deal. We started walking and chatting like old friends, and the whole time, Leonard followed us. The associate director had to literally yell at him to finally get Leonard to leave. Right then, he finally realized how serious the situation was getting. The next day, one of the managers, who was super rude and dismissive about the whole situation, pulled me into her office and profusely apologized. After Leonard was yelled at and went back to the office, the manager had a conversation with him that really creeped her out on my behalf. Apparently he was saying things like, "My relationship with me is ours and has nothing to do with the organization. You have no right to tell me how to behave around me. She likes me and likes what I'm doing. I'm not making her uncomfortable. She needs me to watch out for her." That same day, the entire management team apologized for not taking immediate action. Especially since this is not the first time stuff like this has happened to me. I just asked that from now on, I have absolutely no contact with him. I reiterated several times that I absolutely do not want an apology. I want nothing. Since then, I've learned that Leonard has harassed and assaulted an old coworker who had to file a restraining order against him. This was told to me by the manager who originally dismissed my claims. She had dealt with the other situation, yet nothing was told to any of the other staff about this behavior. And not only that, she berated me in front of other staff for speaking out about my experience, saying that it wasn't that big of a deal, even though she knew he had done it before. If I never have to see that guy again, I will be eternally grateful. The situation was never fully resolved before lockdown. I'm very thankful I've been able to work from home, but I'm not sure how to proceed after restrictions are lifted, and I have to start going back out again. I was thinking about filing a restraining order. My husband and family really want me to, but I pretty much figured out that no one will take me seriously. This happened about 2 weeks ago. I was walking my dog on the normal route. Normally, I would be at 6th form studying my A-levels. However, as we all know, schools are closed. Due to the lockdown, the streets were very quiet. I was about 20 minutes from home when I clocked 2 men in a beaten-up blue van, driving past, staring and leering at me. Nothing too worrying, this happens a lot. However, I soon did start to worry. Obviously, the van is going to be going at a faster pace than me walking, so the van would drive, pause, wait for me to catch up and then drive a little bit ahead. Pause, wait for me to catch up, and it would keep repeating this. I thought perhaps they were looking for an address, but they seemed focused on me and my journey, and nobody was getting out of the van to do deliveries. I know the van that does the deliveries in this area, and this was not that van. I crossed the road so I was on the opposite side of the van in case they tried to grab me. I had a gut instinct they wanted to keep me within their sights while they worked up the courage and waited for the right opportunity to get me. While the van had gotten a few meters ahead, as they were waiting for me, and it was at an angle to their wing mirrors, they wouldn't see me, I ducked behind some hedges. Normally, I would have phoned my parents by this point. However, both of them are key workers and would not be able to leave their work. This left me at a vulnerable position, as I didn't want these 2 men knowing where I lived, where I was home alone. So I resisted the urge to sprint the last 5 minutes home. Me and my dog hid in the bushes for a while. The van drove past a few times and the men were peering out, but they didn't see me. I went home after I felt like they were gone, and thankfully they had. I checked the number plate when I got home, and I believe it was a fake as there were no matches.